What in the world is happening in America? Things have been unstable since 2016 and have been accelerating since the pandemic. In 2025, the chaos feels incredibly intense. So far in the year, we've had massive wildfires permanently displacing tens of thousands of people in Los Angeles, the return of President Trump promising to make America great again, Doge layoffs and cuts, on and off tariffs and tariff threats, ICE raids, and even the possibility of World War III due to conflicts unfolding in the Middle East. In this video, we'll count down 7 reasons America is falling apart, or at least why it feels like it is, with the top 3 reasons being ones that could cripple America's foundation forever. If we want to see conditions across the country get better, we need to operate in reality, not based on rumors, distortions, propaganda, or lies. If you care about America and want to be a part of the solution, make sure you hit subscribe and join the conversation below. Reason 7, economic instability and the likelihood of more hard times ahead. Economic instability is hitting hard and its consequences are felt across the country. Food insecurity impacts tens of millions of Americans each year. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 3.5 million people have lost their jobs due to layoffs or discharges so far in 2025. Millions of Americans are actively searching for work while others are settling in the reality of underemployment, stagnant wages, and broken promises of opportunity. For decades, factory jobs have been disappearing, whether relocated to other states, moved across the border to Mexico, or outsourced to China. The jobs that have replaced them are often lower paying, less stable, and harder to get, which repeats the cycle of poverty in affected communities. Longer job searches and poorly paid gigs are crushing morale. This year, the federal minimum wage is still only $7.25 an hour, the equivalent of a single venti drink at Starbucks. Now add the threat of AI agents and robotics replacing even more jobs in the near future. It's easy to understand why America feels like it's falling apart. What's worse is that these economic pressures directly harm mental health. The American Psychological Association reports that a majority of workers say job insecurity seriously impacts their stress levels, and research links underemployment and unemployment to spikes in depression, anxiety, and even suicide. This isn't surprising, yet we haven't been doing more to help those who are and have been struggling, especially those residing in the Midwest and former boom towns across the country now hollowed out. When people lose the ability to make a living, plan a future, or feel like they matter, their world starts to feel hopeless. And when entire communities, towns, and cities lose their economic power, it's not surprising so many people feel like America is falling apart. At the same time, there are also Americans who are thriving because they have the right degrees, high-paying careers, strong connections, and live in the right place at the right time. These disparities, however, are impossible to ignore. The American dream is a reality for millions of Americans, and for millions of others, it's going to remain only a dream. Reason 6, America looks like it's falling apart. When we travel across the US, it's hard not to notice just how many different areas feel like they're being trashed or abandoned. According to a 2022 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, there are over 1.5 million abandoned properties across the country. Homes, apartment complexes, shopping centers, industrial sites, office buildings, all dilapidated, creating a distasteful, depressing, and sometimes even scary atmosphere. Our infrastructure isn't doing much better either. Nearly 39% of major U.S. roads are rated poor or mediocre, costing the average driver about $1,400 a year in extra repairs and delays. Around 6.8% of our bridges are classified as structurally poor, and 1 in 3 needs repair or replacement. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives U.S. infrastructure a C grade, citing a staggering $3.7 trillion funding gap over the next decade. How did this happen? How could America, the wealthiest country in the world, have so many areas that are in a state of decay? What we're seeing is often the result of long-term economic decline. What happens when industries collapse or move away, jobs disappear, and nothing sustainable comes in to replace them? Maintaining our infrastructure and keeping our cities and towns beautiful takes a lot of resources. Unfortunately, when towns or cities are struggling economically, those resources aren't there. Our surroundings matter. They affect our mood and how we feel about where we live. When entire neighborhoods, towns, and parts of cities look run down or left in ruins, it's hard not to feel like America is crumbling. The reality is, we are working to rebuild and modernize. Congress passed a 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law, just federal infrastructure investment in decades. But these things take time because of how massive America is. To put things into perspective, the US is nearly the same size as the entire continent of Europe in landmass. Repairing and upgrading our infrastructure, neighborhoods, and communities across the country is no small task. Until there are serious, concentrated, decades-long efforts to revitalize communities all across the country, we can expect things to stay pretty much the same. Reason 5. Unprocessed history. We're still carrying the weight of our past. What if it's true, or at least to some extent, that we've been taught different versions of US history depending on where we live? What if all our lives we were taught that the good guys were not actually the good guys? What if the version of history we've been taught was filled with half-truths and half-lies? There was a New York Times feature published before the pandemic hit America in 2020 that compared Texas and California textbooks. Believe it or not, the feature revealed that students in Texas were taught to view slavery as only a sad chapter that America overcame, while students in California were presented with a more critical view of slavery's brutality and inhumanity towards African Americans. This difference matters. How we remember and tell history matters. Remnants of our past are still with us in ways we may not even be conscious of, and they may be shaping how we interact with one another without realizing it. At the same time, the key to addressing the painful parts of our history isn't to blame each other in real life or hurl baseless accusations of racism or whatever. It's to create space for understanding when conversations are needed and to work together towards building a better and fairer future for all of us. Have you ever gone through something so painful that no matter how hard you tried to move on, the feelings kept coming back, even years or decades later? Or maybe there was something you did that you deeply regretted, but the shame was so heavy that all you could do was try to bury the memory and suppress the feelings. Just like in our personal lives, when something from the past keeps resurfacing, it's often a sign that something unresolved still needs to be faced. The same is true for a country. America's past keeps showing up because the wounds caused by the culture and systems that built and shaped our country haven't been fully acknowledged or healed. This is an unfortunate reality that we can only continue to sweep under the rug, but it's minor compared to what I'll share later on. Reason 4, we're losing our sense of community and it's killing us. Have you noticed how difficult it's become to meet new people in your area? Going out has become increasingly unaffordable. The availability of accessible shared spaces has sharply decreased over the decades. According to Pew Research Center, only 66% of Americans say they feel close to people in their country compared to a global median of 83%. At the local level, it's even worse. Just 54% feel connected to their community. This disconnect has real consequences. We know that social isolation during the pandemic harmed our mental health. Maybe you've felt it too, that hollow numbness, the same daily routine with barely any real human connection, the constant chatter in your head, the low-grade depression, the urge to tune out just to get through the day. Research has shown that enduring long periods of loneliness is as harmful to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Without third spaces and being in community with one another, we've swapped our relationships for meaning found in identity politics. Tribal labels often matter more than the connection or the actual people in front of us, and honestly, all sides are guilty of this. Without these deeper in-person ties, we're losing not only each other or even our sense of actual reality, we're losing ourselves too. We're losing what it means for us to be alive and to be human. In our search for connection and meaning, if we've given up on our lives, one or two things typically happens. 1, we stop caring altogether and live on autopilot, which is very painful. Or 2, we cling to anyone who promises that they have the answers and can fix all of our problems, especially in the realm of politics. Reason 3, it's impossible to survive financially. According to Market Watch, 57% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck in 2025. That's over half the country, especially common among parents and younger adults. Many are relying on credit cards just to stay afloat, with 44% of Americans using credit cards to cover basic living expenses like rent, groceries, and utility bills. Prices have surged compared to pre-pandemic levels. Consumer prices overall are up about 23 to 24% since early 2019, and grocery prices have jumped nearly 30%, meaning a $100 grocery run now costs closer to $130 plus tax. The future looks bleak. Many of us can't afford to buy homes, especially Generation Z and the younger millennials. The cost of raising a child is estimated to be at least $300,000 in many parts of the country. When we're stuck in survival mode, it shapes everything. It colors how we see our lives, our neighborhoods, our future, and our country. We feel overwhelmed, tired, and burned out. And that stress and heaviness makes it easy to see only the negatives all around us and believe that everything is awful and falling apart. Depending on where in the country we live, there are places that do feel like they're falling apart. When enough people are struggling just to get by, the cracks in the system feels impossible to ignore. This is the emotional and psychological weight of economic stress, especially when others are depending on us to provide financially and the risk of eviction or homelessness looms large. Reason 2, we don't trust our politicians and institutions anymore. Rather than inspire us, our politicians divide us. We've been let down so many times in the past by both major parties. People are tired of being ignored. We've been crying out for help, and it often feels like nobody cares. We don't even seem to have a shared identity anymore. What does it mean for us to be an American anyways? It's a confusing time to exist as people with no common anchor for what it means to live here now in 2025. According to Pew Research Center, as of May 2024, only 22% of Americans say they trust the federal government, just about always or most of the time. That's a slight uptick from recent years, but still near historic lows. And it's not just government. According to the data compiled by the Plural of You, just 1 in 4 Americans believe most people can be trusted, a major drop from nearly half in the 1970s. This collapse in trust shapes everything from how we vote to how we relate to one another. And without trust, it's nearly impossible to build anything meaningful, let alone a country that feels open, safe, and worth investing in. This is a big reason why America feels like it's falling apart, because many of us no longer believe anyone is truly looking out for us. If we don't have trust in our leaders and institutions, as well as in one another, how can we expect to have a sustainable, functional society? Last but not least, reason 1, our sense of reality is being hijacked by the internet as well as the media. Do you ever find yourself mindlessly scrolling online? This one phenomenon is contributing to the downfall of America. Our perceptions are being shaped by bots, algorithms, and echo chambers. A 2025 Nature Scientific Reports study found that about 20% of social media chatter on major events comes from bots, automated accounts designed to spread disinformation, manipulate narratives, and drown out facts and real conversations. These bots flood platforms with manipulative messages designed to spark outrage and dominate our feeds, while real humans are just trying to make sense of the breaking news and information. There are entire farms of them operating around the world. Add to the fact that social media platforms have figured out what media outlets and marketers have long known. Negativity sells. Outrage, fear, and drama are what keeps us scrolling and glued to our devices. According to a survey by reviews.org, the average American spent about 2.5 months on their phones in 2024. Let me repeat that again. The average American spent 2.5 months on their phone in 2024. That's over 5 hours a day. Yikes. I don't know about you, but when I first learned about this statistic, I wanted to toss my phone far away from me. But here's the scariest part. This hijacking of reality is invisible while it's happening. We often don't realize how manipulated we are because a lot of our lives exist online. We become reactive, fearful, anxious, angry, and hopeless without fully understanding why. Even if your day, your town, your personal life is okay, being fed a constant diet of negativity and chaos can make it seem like your life and the world around you is falling apart. Take the recent ICE protests in Los Angeles, for instance. While the mostly peaceful protests deaths were concentrated around City Hall in downtown Los Angeles, the destruction caused by the rioters and agitators are mostly confined to a small part of the downtown area. However, if you weren't in Los Angeles or you aren't from Los Angeles, you would have believed that all of Los Angeles was falling apart, which was absolutely not true. Losing our shared sense of reality is dangerous. If we can't agree on what's real, we won't be able to hear each other or solve any of the many problems we face in this country. Our country is very big and complex with over 340 million citizens. Our experiences, where we live, the ghosts of our past, and what we're exposed to online and offline shape how we see the world. To many, it feels like the country is falling apart because in some very real, invisible ways it is. If we don't operate within reality, the cracks in our society will only continue to widen until we reach a breaking point, which is the outcome we all want to avoid. What do you think? Do you think America's falling apart? What are you seeing specifically where you're living? Leave a comment below and include the state you're in.